But then the protagonist stopped to think that it was not the time to focus on that. It was too early to let his guard down, and his father might realize he had escaped. He started running, saying he should distance himself as much as possible from that basement. As he ran, he smiled, thinking that the moment he had been dreaming of had finally arrived. For the first time, he was free. Not long ago, escaping seemed impossible, so he never imagined that the doors would simply open. But then he stopped running and asked himself, why did the doors open? It was impossible for it to be a system malfunction. His father was extremely meticulous and would never make such a mistake. That's when he wondered, what if the opening of the door was intentional? He shook his head, saying no, something like that was impossible, especially since his father was the one who made the rule never to leave that place. He looked around, saw people talking, school children laughing, and a little boy going to get a balloon. He saw the excited boy and his smile and family. The children were running and he felt happy, thinking that it was all right. The boy bumped into someone, and the balloon rose. While the protagonist thought that in the end, everything his father said was a lie, he realized how peaceful it was outside. This was how life outside the basement was. Everyone there was living a calm life, just as he had hoped. The balloon floated towards the sun, while he thought that an approaching apocalypse made no sense. People were calm. Then everyone felt something strange, and he remembered that his father always said that the end would come without any warning. Suddenly, all the birds in the city began to flee. People looked up confused. The entire city was under a shadow, and behind the balloon, another planet was visible. It covered the sun while everyone looked up confused. Something started to come out of that planet, almost like a virus searching for a host. From the sky, headed toward the Earth. People on the ground said that it seemed to be getting closer. No one had any idea what it was, and someone asked if it might be the moon. The protagonist said it was ridiculous to call it the moon, and asked if they weren't seeing what he was seeing. Amidst the advance of that planet, a creature was visible. The protagonist was paralyzed. As that creature, there were countless others connected to it. The tangled mass of monsters formed tentacles. They continued advancing, linking with each other until they reached the middle of the city. Never leave the basement. His father always said that was the basic rule of survival. However, there was an exception. If the location of that place was exposed to the enemy, the first creature strangely dove straight into that sewer. The father scratched out the first rule, saying that in the face of great danger, no one replied. The security systems showed that the doors would be closed as all the creatures ran for the corridors. Outside, the population didn't understand what was happening. An infinite tangle of creatures reached the ground. It all happened so suddenly that no one even reacted. In a second, a blonde guy was grabbed and pulled by one of the creatures. Before he could react, he found himself face to face with a monster's mouth. People just watched as the guy's remains fell in front of everyone. With that, they started screaming and everyone tried to flee. A boy was walking by with headphones on while everyone passed by. He seemed confused and noticed something above him, and was immediately crushed. A muscular creature started hurling rocks at everyone, and another with a clawed arm jumped into the crowd, splashing 3 people in one stroke. In that place, no one could escape any of the creatures. The protagonist stood there, not knowing what was happening. People talk about calling the police, but he couldn't react. Then he remembered his father always said that when the apocalypse came, the world would be bathed in blood and the only thing left would be a heap of ashes. The protagonist looked up and saw a creature 3 times taller than a building staring everyone. The city scream is one of its steps destroyed half the city. With that, the apocalypse began. The plan in the sky continued to rain creatures upon the earth. Lying on the ground, the protagonist realized that his father had always been right. Then he remembered his father saying that his mother was dead and wondered if he was right about that too. The citizens continued trying to flee from the creatures, but for unprepared humans, it was impossible. Then someone grabbed the protagonist's arm. When he looked, it was his father. He was about to ask how this happened. But his father just told him to keep running. A glance back showed everyone being devoured. He was shocked as his father turned the corner and followed only to face a horde of creatures again. His father had already pulled him and told him to follow. Strangely, his father was moving against the fleeing crowd. Both were running towards a destroyed bridge. No matter which way he looked, the creatures were devouring people. A man and a cat yelled for them to run faster and girls seemed confused. Behind them, the mass of creatures continued advancing. Meanwhile, his father and the protagonist were almost at the end of the bridge. The mass of monsters carried everyone who had already died. The protagonist warned his father that they were going to be caught, but his father told him to shut up and run. That was the only way they could get out of the city alive. Under the bridge, the mass of creatures was already absorbing everything. The protagonist looked back and told his father that they were being followed. That's when something stopped him. A creature behind a taxi managed to grab his foot. The monster squeezed and crushed his leg. The protagonist agonized, knowing that if he didn't free himself, he would die. However, his father picked up a rock and smashed the creature with it. The monster fell away and the protagonist cried out in pain. His father glared at him, and just as he was about to say something, they both fell to pressure. The mass of monsters continued advancing. He trembled and started to get up, knowing he had to run to survive. The problem was that he realized, little by little, that the distance between them and the creatures was decreasing rapidly. He felt a pain in his leg and fell to the ground, realizing that no matter how much he ran, he couldn't escape. His father came and stared at him. The boy told his father to run, saying he wouldn't make it out alive in this state. At least if his father got out, you could survive on his own. His father's foot started to turn away and the boy thought that was right. He wanted his father to run because he had always been ignored anyway. However, in the midst of it all, his father reached out his hands and asked why he wasn't getting up. The boy was confused and shouted, saying that his father should be running. His father simply said that he would stay alive because he had a plan. The boy was confused and said it was impossible for him to have a plan for this. However, he saw that his father's expression hadn't changed. He paused for a second and remembered his father's expression when he was wrong. He knew that his father really had a plan, so he took his father's hands. His father pulled him up and told him to run. The boy asked his father if he didn't have a plan. That's when he noticed that his father had left something in his hand. His father just said there was no time and that he needed to escape now via the bridge. He started running again, saying he would obey. He weaved between cars and distanced himself. Then he noticed his shadow and looked back. The bridge's support had broken and everything started to collapse. The passage that connected that side of the city to the other fell into the void. Protagonist wondered what had happened to his father. He stood still for a moment, questioning why this happened now. Remembering that his father said he would survive because he had a plan, he wondered if this was the plan. Now he had no idea why this happened. Why did his father go so far for him but also torture him his whole life? He felt on the bridge, questioning why his father did this in the end. He told himself he survived, but then for what? What was he surviving for? All in the life he had been dreaming of on the surface disappeared. The calm life in a peaceful place and also the sole objective he had been carrying. He begins to cry, saying he wanted to ask. He sees his father and questions why he went so far to save him like this in the end. The father says nothing and he demands his father to tell him what he is going to survive for in this apocalyptic world. He feels a handshake from his parents and turns around. It is then that he remembers the paper in his hand. Slowly he opens his hand and sees what is there. However, the creature starts climbing the bridge. The protagonist gets startled and turns to run. However, his leg is still hurting and he ends up stopping. He leans on a pillar nearby and the creature trips. With that, the side of the bridge breaks and both fall rolling to the side. The boy slowly tries to get up, but the problem is that this leg can't take anymore. The creature raises its head and he knows there is no way to escape that. He is really going to die like this. However, he sees a light at the end of it all. He believes there was nothing left. However, on the paper in his hand, he saw the message,